Plugged Inland represents KVCR's continuing interest in focusing on important issues in the inland area. Supported by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, we're looking into innovations and solutions in education as part of the American Graduate Let's Make It Happen. And you can help us make it happen. Call us anytime during the show at 866-367-5827. Or you can send questions or comments right from our website at pluggedinland.org. Or you can email us questions and comments to questions@pluggedinland.org. And you can tweet us at #KVCR. Good evening and welcome to Plugged Inland. I'm Roger Bowman. Tonight we look at the benefits of a high school diploma to our kids' future success. Many people who have great careers and have become business owners credit the fullness of their education to having aroused the interest in learning itself. One such person is Garner Holt, a tinkerer as a child who became a model builder in his teens and went on to create a company renowned for its ability to bring life to anything one can imagine. Let's take a look.
Well, obviously there's something magical about Disneyland, and I had been there when I was 5 or 6 years old. Of course I didn't remember it, but when I was 12 or so, my parents took me on this trip to Disneyland at my request, and I'd heard all about it, and I'd seen some things on television about the Haunted Mansion there, and my parents took me to this place, and I think from the moment I walked in the gate and started walking down Main Street, all the sights and the smells and the sounds, and I was enamored with it. And after I went on the various attractions throughout the day, I just was so excited. I knew that that's what I wanted to do the rest of my life. My parents had discussed my being a veterinarian all my life up to that point because my dad was in the horse business, but I knew immediately that I wasn't going to be a veterinarian. I wanted to build theme park rides the rest of my life. Yeah, I went home and I immediately conceived of a company, and I named it Garner Holt Productions because there was Walt Disney Productions. I wanted to be just like them. And I decided to set up a little business, so I took over a corner of my parents' garage and put up a card table and put a shingle up and said Garner Holt Productions, and I decided that I was in business at that point, and that's where it all started, on a little card table in the parents' garage. One day I was in my junior high school class, I don't recall which one, but I got a call slip to the principal's office, and that wasn't unusual because I was getting called there all the time, it seemed like, but this one I went and found out that some promotion director from a local mall had called, and I was shocked and amazed, and I called her back, and she said, well, I saw in the newspaper that you had a haunted house at your home, and for Halloween, and it seemed successful, and what would it take to build one for the mall for next year? And I said, well, absolutely, that's what we're here for. Garner Holt Productions can help you build a haunted house for your mall. And so I asked my mom and dad to buy me a suit, a business suit, a 3-piece suit, and it was a gray suit. We went down, and they were nice enough to buy me this suit, and I went to the Goodwill, and I found an old briefcase for a couple dollars, and I wanted to represent myself as much as a businessman as I could, and I walked into the mall promotion office, and I negotiated a haunted house. My mom actually had to drive me there because I wasn't driving at that point, but I came out and I had sold them a haunted house that I was going to build in a trailer. I suggested building it in a trailer and pulling it into the mall. I knew a neighbor had an old burned out construction trailer that I could build it in. And so my parents, I think at that point thought, wow, this is getting a little dangerous here. The kid's selling stuff to malls and has to build a haunted house in a trailer now. And so I think they were a little concerned at first, but I told them I could do it, and I just forged ahead and eventually got done. That was the beginning of Garner Holt Productions. High school was kind of interesting. I was a really good student in the areas that I thought applied to the business that I wanted to do. I wasn't as good in other subjects. I talked my science teachers or my shop teachers into letting me work on my projects. So the drafting teacher, I would go in and I would do drafting, not on the school projects that everyone else was doing, but I would do the things on my figures because they were more complex than what the other kids were drawing. So they didn't have a problem with that. An electronics teacher let me build some electronic controls in that class, and so various other teachers would allow me to do some of my projects after I went and showed them the plans and convinced them that could I use the school equipment to build the things that I was doing. So it was very helpful, and the teachers were very supportive of me trying to do the things that I wanted to do. Well, we're the largest company in the world now that does what we do. We have worked in 28 different countries. We do as much international as we do domestically at this point. So we do a lot of that now, and we continue to expand and grow and develop new technologies. And the companies that come to us, the Disneys and Universals and others, seem to always raise the bar as far as the requests that they have that our creations can accomplish. And so we're constantly trying to develop new technologies and techniques and push the envelope as far as what we can do in the industry and for the art of animatronics. We already are pursuing some opportunities in medical simulation, which has to do with training doctors and nurses and that type of thing, using medical simulators that are animatronic patients that can, through a use of a computer control, react in different ways. They can have a heart attack, or they can do different things on the table, and then the doctors have to respond, and just like it was a real patient. So there are potential possibilities for training and things that we're pursuing. It's been proven that children respond with afflictions like Down syndrome and others. They respond in an interesting way to these types of characters and these big giant animatronic teddy bears and things. There's kind of a connection that they make with them, and that's an interesting direction that we'd like to pursue. We have had some interesting applications for animatronics outside the theme park world, which we have created a number of characters which are used by the military in a simulator sense to where they interact with soldiers in a battlefield environment. And normally they have role players, which are human beings that shoot back and that type of thing, that they can play these live war game type things with. But role players are expensive, and they're hard to round up, and people are expensive to use. So we've created for the government and the Navy some animatronic characters that are, suicide bombers and things of that nature that they would run into in a field in Afghanistan, let's say, and that they would have to react to, and that they might pull a gun on them or that type of thing. And so we've used theme park style animatronics for military purposes also. And this is really important to us because it's an application to where the training that they receive using our animatronics as a piece of that training could ultimately train a soldier to react to a certain situation that may save his life or her life down the road. And so when you're doing something that's not just entertainment but could potentially be life-saving to one of our infantry or soldiers, it's a very important task. Well, I think that I have somehow, that trip to Disneyland created kind of a tunnel vision, and I could only see, doing this one thing very clearly. And I'm not sure what a person's makeup is that causes that to happen. I think that, I was very fortunate in that I landed on something that I was that passionate about and that I wanted to do the rest of my life. And, it's unfortunate, but I think a lot of people don't. And, I know people who are 65 years old that don't know what they want to do when they grow up, and they never will. I think that because I would live my passion, and I think that's the whole point. I think, to focus on something and live your passion, I mean, that's living your dream, and that's what I've done.
Plugged Inland represents KVCR's continuing interest in focusing on important issues in the inland area. Supported by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, we're looking into innovations and solutions in education as part of the American Graduate Let's Make It Happen. And you can help us make it happen. Call us anytime during the show at 866-367-5827. Or you can send questions or comments right from our website at pluggedinland.org. Or you can email us questions and comments to questions@pluggedinland.org. And you can tweet us at #KVCR. I believe we in the Inland Empire should be proud to have innovators such as Garner Holt amongst us. But for everyone who enjoys their work, they too are a success story. I'd like to take this opportunity to encourage Pacific alum to reflect back on how much they value their education. And we're going to talk to two of them here with us now. Joining me in studio are Pacific alums Steven Wright, a member of our law enforcement community, and Carole Inman, owner of the Kool Cactus Cafe in Loma, Linda, and founder of Catering by Carole. Thank you both for being here.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Great. So Garner Holt was just talking in that video about how he knew his passion very early, and that definitely does not happen for most of us.
Yeah.
Steve, let me ask you, when did you know that you wanted to be in law enforcement?
Well, I grew up in a law enforcement community. My dad was a police officer, so ever since a young age, it's always a passion that I've always wanted to do.
So you knew early on because your entire family was surrounded by it.
Right.
So you probably were pretty motivated in high school, I would imagine, to graduate.
Right.
And Carole, how about you?
Probably about 10 or 11, maybe even younger. I was cooking with my mom at home and always baking and making all different kinds of recipes, trying it out on all of our neighbors. So probably then, and I think heading in a more healthy direction.
So I'm the oddball out, I guess, because I did not know, actually, until I went into the military, what I wanted to do as a career. So, Carole, you mentioned that you knew and were more or less catering at that young age, entertaining. And have you enjoyed that aspect of it?
I did enjoy that very much, and I like creating different recipes, trying out on our family and friends, different things that they like to eat, but trying to stay healthy and doing it that way.
So what led you to become a business owner?
Probably there was another restaurant that had been vacant for many years, and my mom asked me if I thought I could do a restaurant, put a restaurant together, and I told her no, because I don't know anything about it. And she said, well, if you don't get it, I will. So I just started another restaurant, and it took a little while to get together since I hadn't done this before. But I had a background in cooking, and my uncles and aunts would come over and we'd try out recipes on them. And I got involved with Loma Linda because of the healthy lifestyles that they have. And one of the things that they did for me in the beginning was go through my menu and make things healthier, pulling out any fat and low sodium, and that's how I started.
And we're talking Mexican food here, right?
Yes.
So it's not often you see things like tofu on Mexican menus.
No, we have tofu, and we have mushroom spinach, and we have zucchini. We have a lot of different things just because of being in Loma Linda, and it is a blue zone, so people are much healthier there.
What is the blue zone?
A blue zone is a place that people live a longer life because of the lifestyle. They do a lot of exercising, and what they eat is mostly vegetarian. The Seventh-day Adventist community eats vegetarian things.
I think I have a neighbor that's maybe a blue house. So, Carole, obviously being a business owner entails a lot more than just knowing recipes.
Yes.
There's so much that go into it. How would you have been successful had you, for instance, dropped out of high school?
I probably would not have been motivated if I had dropped out of high school. I would have been interested in something else that wouldn't have taken me in that direction.
And Steve, I want to ask you, you wanted to be in law enforcement. That means an academy, and you have to go through an academy.
Right.
So do they take people that, for instance, have dropped out of high school?
No, they don't even consider it.
Don't even consider it. So for you, knowing that you would be in law enforcement, you had a path in mind that necessitated high school graduation.
Right.
Well, how many of your colleagues, friends, for instance, didn't?
As in, didn't get a degree?
Yeah, when you were, didn't get their diploma. When you were in high school?
There was a lot. I mean, I knew a bunch of kids that I went to school with that they were more interested in getting a job and starting their life. Whether they didn't know what they wanted to do, but they wanted to get it started.
Yeah, that's really what I want to talk about for a moment. That's an impetus? I mean, we're here talking about graduation rates in America that are that show statistics of 1 in 4 children don't graduate high school. 1 in 4. 75% of the kids graduate high school, 25% don't. So you were surrounded by that, and I think the common perception out there is that kids are in a hurry. And high school is an obligatory period. You know, a lot of kids feel they've matured and hit their prime by the age of 16. Why do they have to learn world history? It isn't relevant to their future. How often did you find that?
It happened a lot. I mean, I was fortunate enough to have a good family structure. I also played sports in high school, so you had to keep good grades in order to do that. So for me, I was lucky enough to have that family support at home to where if I didn't have the grades, I couldn't play sports in high school. So,
have you kept in touch with some of those old friends?
For the most part, yeah. The ones that kind of tweedled off and
yeah,
you know, did their own thing, not so much. But
and you work in law enforcement. You're a police officer,
right?
And that means you come in contact with a lot of our youth out there on the streets,
right?
And people perceive that that's the most vulnerable age, especially, and I'm going to generalize here, for young males who may steer a different path, perhaps into gang activity or something else that they perceive is going to make them richer quicker with less work.
Right. I mean, I see it a lot of the kids nowadays where that's just it. They want to make money now. They don't want to wait. So they'll do what they need to do in order to make a fast cash.
Why do you think they want the cash?
Well, they want nice clothes. They want those new shoes. They want a nice fancy car. What better way to do it than, you know, the only way they know how.
Who is not telling them, hey, just, you know, cool your heels for a couple of years, get your high school diploma, and then you'll have other options? I mean, obviously we wouldn't want to say an option is deviant behavior or gang activity, but nonetheless, if you get that secured behind you, nobody ever takes it away in your lifetime. You always have it. Right. So do they not have a sense of how important and permanent that decision is?
You know, I think, yeah, in a sense when they're growing up they did, but then you get into the peer pressures in high school, you get into some of the music they may listen to or just their older siblings, and they tell them this is the way to go. Don't do it this way because that's not cool. Do it this way. Do it our way.
How much of an influence does that have?
I think it has a lot. Peer pressure, that's one of the biggest things. I mean, a lot of these kids who join gangs, that's the reason why they do it, is because they don't have that structure at home, but the gang culture will give them that structure, they think. They think they will get friends in order to be cool, and so they join it because, well, they get that structure. I mean, they'll make the money, they'll get the friends, they'll have the support, and they'll get their manhood, I guess.
Okay, so I'm going to circle back because, Carole, I know you have something to talk about peer pressure, but we actually have our first call, so we're going to take that call out from San Bernardino. Skipper, what's on your mind?
I was just commenting on the good food at the Kool Cactus.
Great, a shout out for you, Carole.
Thank you very much.
Carole, let me ask you, you mentioned about peer pressure, and you actually have kids that have gone through high school.
Yes.
So what do you think are the changes now between when you went through and what you observed your kids experiencing?
I think nowadays there are a lot more choices for people. There's a lot more distractions for the kids. And I think when I was in high school, there wasn't all of that at all. I think that it was you were more focused on what you had to do, but I think now, like my son goes to high school now. My younger son goes to high school, and I can see the difference now compared to when I went to high school. So they are involved in a lot more sports. They're involved in a lot more activities, and it's just constantly going somewhere.
But a lot of those activities are centered out of the high school itself.
Yes.
So that almost keeps them in the sphere of the high school. It may be interfering perhaps with homework.
Yes.
But those sports and those extracurricular activities at least keep them connected to the high school community.
That is true, because when I was in high school, I belonged to a lot of the clubs at school, and I think that's really one of the things that did keep me connected with my friends and everybody. But it didn't seem like there was the drug involvement at that time. I don't remember any of it like it is nowadays.
Do you think drugs are one of the key factors for kids either being motivated to not attend the school or to go for the fast cash?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say we all, but the majority of the kids that I went to school with, including myself, you experiment with it. And marijuana is that big thing. You can buy it at a retail store now. And that's just the gateway to the more, harder drugs. So
let me make an analogy for a moment. And I'm not in any way advocating kids doing drugs, but I will say adults who are legally able to imbibe in alcohol, let's use that as a reference. There are people who, they go to a party, they don't go to work the next day, they have a designated driver if they're going to drink too much, and they drink a reasonable amount and act in a mature, reasonable way. Contrasting that with the alcoholic or the person that gets drunk at a bar and argues about nobody taking their keys and drives drunk. So what you're talking about, kids experimenting with marijuana at the youthful age, we've known that for decades now. And it's very different to have kids who experiment a little bit versus those that, and I'll ask you, that becomes like a full-time activity for them. Do you experience that very often?
Yeah, I do, and I see it every day. I mean, you'll have as young as middle schoolers out there selling marijuana or even harder drugs just to make, the fast cash.
You talk about the fast cash. I'm going to go to an email first, but I want to circle back and talk about the difference between families that need the money versus the bling. So let's go to the email. It's a question from Brett of Rialto. What do you suggest to a parent whose son is not interested in school, who doesn't care about homework, and is only interested in music, failing his classes? A person says they tried grounding, taking away everything he owns, nothing seems to work.
I'm not a parent, so I can't tell you how to raise your kids, but it sounds like they're getting that ideal from the music they listen to. A lot of I don't want to sound politically incorrect, but the rap music, a lot of those guys grew up in hard times, kind of like we are now, and that was their way out. But a lot of people think that they can produce music and that's going to be their way out, but in reality, it's not always the case.
Okay, first, Steve, some people know me and know my stand, and our audience doesn't necessarily, but have you and I talked about rap music before we started live on the show?
No.
Okay. That's come up from several people I've talked to offline about the influence of music on today's kids. Is it that they see themselves as being the next star and that's why they're not motivated by a normal career path? Or is it that the music is continually saying lyrics that say nothing is important but bling and other benefits?
Probably. I mean, I was one of those kids who learned the lyrics to a song before he learned, a spelling word, to where I could repeat a song off the radio, but when it came to practicing for a spelling bee or something, I couldn't tell you how it was spelled. My parents always got mad at me for it, but it's because we listen to it every day, and it kind of gets embedded into your mind that this is the way to do it.
Okay. Now, we all know, I'm diving into this a little bit because I think there will be parents out there watching who are concerned about whether or not to curtail that music from their kids. I mean, you want to foster the sense of independence that a child has, such as we saw the video of Garner Holt. His parents encouraged him to go down a path even though his parents wanted him to become a veterinarian. And so how much do you support and how much do you curtail? For example, we all know the Beatles, Lucy in the Sky with Diamond. Most people say that was a reference to LSD, and yet I don't think all of this generation now that grew up with that are corrupted by LSD. So is rap something that even if they know the lyrics, they just shake off as they get more mature?
No, I mean, I still listen to some of that music. I mean, it's good music. I think parents should listen to what their kids want to do because they do have a sense of what they want to do in their life, and whether that be the next R&B rap artist or a veterinarian. I mean, they kind of have a sense of what they want to do, whether that's exactly what they want to do in the long run, but in a way you have to listen to what your kids are saying, but then again you have to show them structure and, other routes.
So Carole, you had a little bit different scenario in your life. You are somebody who graduated high school, but you had family that didn't.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think it was just a difficult time in my family's life because my mother was a single parent and she had 5 children and she worked 3 jobs, and it was very difficult for my mom to always see what was going on with all of the children. But everybody turned out okay.
But not everybody graduated,
No,
is that
not
right?
everybody graduated.
So what kind of an impact do you think that that has had on them? Have they overcome that? Was it an extra obstacle and an unnecessary impediment?
I think it was an obstacle at one point, but I think everybody has overcome it, and they've all gone through life and gotten good jobs. And I have one sister that she lives in Tucson, and so she worked at a prison out there for many years, and she's retired now and has a good life. So she had all that going for her, but she went back to school, and she accomplished what she needed to do. And even with my mom, when she was raising us, she had 3 jobs, and she was a counselor at juvenile hall. So I think just having my mom with that way of thinking, of always telling us that there is nothing that you can't do if you want to do something. So she said, just go forward and put whatever effort you have to into it and get it accomplished. So I think with my mom's thinking that way, that's how we turned out the way we did.
One of the things our statistics don't tell us, at least not that I've encountered, is how many of those that don't complete high school later return and do complete it. Because I think, as you mentioned, there's a lot of examples of people when they're youthful, they don't understand the correlation between that diploma and their future success, their future credibility.
Yes.
Whereas later, as you get a little older, the economic reality of our capitalist system definitely wakes you up to that pretty quickly.
Yes.
So they need an opportunity to circle back and complete it, and then just move forward as if they had never dropped out. Your family members, it looks like, were able to avail themselves of that.
Yes. But I think it was really because of the structure like we had with my mom. And she always put a positive spin on everything with us, and she was never negative on anything. So she really pushed us forward to accomplish things in life. And they all have done that. So
you've mentioned the lack of structure in your home because your mother worked 3 jobs.
Yes.
How much of it is that there's a lack of structure and lack of monitoring versus how much is the other children didn't have a lot of face time, let's say, because your mother had to work? You were first generation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? That, I'm sure, entails a lot of extra difficulties.
You mean as far as myself personally?
No, your mother migrated to the country?
Yes.
So you were the first one born in America in your family?
It was my grandparents that had migrated to the country. So when my mom came out here, she actually went to San Bernardino High School and graduated from San Bernardino High School. And all of her brothers graduated from there also and went into the Army. And after that, we all went to school too.
Okay. We've talked a little bit about Pacific. I want to, in just a moment, we have another email. I want to examine how good is Pacific and what's the difference between those schools that are deemed a good school versus those schools that are subject to a reputation as not necessarily a good school, the old Pacific reputation. First, let's go to an email. A question from Bree. Stephen, this viewer felt like you were saying that you were kind of a little lost. You experimented, you weren't very motivated by your classes, you listened to that music at the time, and yet you turned it around. The question is, what made Stephen turn his life around?
You know, my dad was always a stickler to doing the right thing. There came a point in my time where he thought I was kind of veering off into the wrong path, and I guess you can call it an intervention. With his ties to law enforcement and all the people that he knows, I found myself one day getting a private tour of West Valley.
What is West Valley?
The detention center, the jail in Rancho Cucamonga. So one night he took me out there without me knowing, and I got a private tour of it for a couple hours. And I got to interact with, you know, people are there for life, people are there for petty crimes to violent crimes. And it opened my eyes to, if I veer down this road of, you know, bad, I could end up here. So after a couple hours of talking to a bunch of the guys out there, I had a new sense of, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, kind of thing.
So let me ask, you're out there, we talked a little bit about you're interacting with youths that are out there trying to make that quick money, selling drugs, whatever it may be. I can only imagine, they have a sense that they're going to wind up there at some point. Are they just mentally acclimated to the idea that they're going to serve some time, get out, and that's going to kind of be their revolving door? You tell me, you're out on the street. You paint the picture for me.
Yeah, I can see it. You know, everybody wants their respect, and whether that be a pro athlete or that hardcore gang member that you come across, somebody along the lines will have respect for that person. And a lot of the kids that I come into contact with, if they're not doing good in school, they probably have somebody on the outside of school who will say, if you do this, you'll earn your respect in this aspect, rather than if you do good and you're a geek in school, well, you're just going to be known as a geek and you're not very cool, kind of thing.
Carole, let me ask you, how big do you think peer pressure is now inside a school? If you have kids that are performing well, are they ostracized?
I think some of them are, but I think that, like with my son, he does very well in school, and all of his friends do well, so I think you kind of stick to those kind of kids, and that's, you know, you're fine over there.
That's it. Where does he go to high school?
Goes to Redlands High School.
Okay. We're going to talk about Pacific for a moment because that's where you're an alum from. We had Tex Acosta on our first episode, the principal, and he showed us these charts that said Pacific has just done year over year substantially better in their test scores across the board. So they aren't up to the California standard yet. Many schools are not, but the charts just show a dramatic upward path, which means obviously at some time in the past, it wasn't at the level it's at now. How did you feel that affected your experience if you attended, for instance, your recent, fairly recent, when it wasn't at its peak?
You know, my teachers always strive to get good grades and do good in school. It's kind of like the beginning to your future, and if you don't do good here, you know, you won't go to college, you'll be working a 9-to-5 job, and you're not going to like what you do. So I didn't want to be that guy who was working a 9-to-5 job and hated his life. I wanted to do something that I liked, and a diploma at the time was, if you didn't have a diploma, you're not getting a good job. So
you talked about the teachers, and we had Marlon on. Is it fair to say that even at schools where not everybody is reaching that rate that we want to see in California, there are still very motivated, very involved teachers?
There is, and I had great teachers throughout all of my years in school, including college. You know, they sat down and they helped you, whether you didn't like them at the time because you thought they were picking on you or what. You look back at it now and, you know, they help mold you to be who you are today, including myself.
So then what are some of the factors, do you think, that differentiates a school that is performing at a very high level versus schools in some of these regions where they're underperforming? If we're saying it's not the teachers, what are some of the factors that you can think of that might affect that?
To where they don't get a diploma? I mean, the region of where the school's at. I mean, Pacific High School's in a rough part of the neighborhood. You don't have kids that live in Beverly Hills going to Pacific High School. You just won't find it.
How does that impact the kids and their school performance? I mean, what do you think goes through the mind of a kid in that neighborhood when it comes to balancing the various life priorities in their high school education?
I mean, a lot of kids when I grew up, a lot of them had a good family structure, but a lot of them didn't. And, you know, they had to get a job at a young age to help support their family. Whether their parents working 2 jobs at the time or they weren't working, they're unemployed. They had to find a way to help support their family. So they would do what they needed to do that.
Do you think that's true of a lot of the region, say, you mentioned Pacific, that a lot of the kids actually are helping to bring income into the family?
I think that's their mindset. That's what they want to do, whether that be doing something illegal or maybe they get a job at McDonald's or something. Every kid wants to help support their family, and I think that has a big factor in it.
I can imagine that helping to support a family that, especially with this recession, are really challenged to make ends meet, versus learning world history. It just, what impact does knowing War of the Roses have on their future versus being able to go and produce income right now?
Yeah.
Tell me this though. You mentioned the bling.
Right.
There's an element, and I'm assuming it's not a large element, but there's an element for whom raising money fast means better shoes and better bling.
Right.
How often do you see that?
Well, I mean, they see these kids they see, I guess you can call them their mentor on TV. They're the rap artists or the actors, and they're all driving the fancy cars. They're all dressed nice, and they all want to be like that person. And if their parents are working 2 jobs and they're barely making ends meet to support them, they have to do something because they don't want to come to school with raggedy shoes, raggedy clothes. They want to have that idea that, well, if I make money now, this is what I can get myself. History, who cares about history?
I understand completely. I grew up in a not affluent neighborhood and was very envious of the kids that would go. It's almost as if what you drive and what you wear speak about you as a person. And once you've matured as an adult, it'd be nice to be able to just tell these kids, we understand, we're not judging you at all. Just realize your own potential and it will eventually come. For now, let's go to a break to remind everybody how you can talk to our guests and ask your own questions. Plugged Inland represents KVCR's continuing interest in focusing on important issues in the inland area. Supported by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, we're looking into innovations and solutions in education as part of the American Graduate Let's Make It Happen. And you can help us make it happen. Call us anytime during the show at 866-367-5827. Or you can send questions or comments right from our website at pluggedinland.org. Or you can email us questions and comments to questions@pluggedinland.org. And you can tweet us at #KVCR. Carole, before the break, we were talking a little bit about lack of parental oversight and how that impacts kids. But you had teased something earlier that I want to get back to, and that is the idea of so very many activities these days.
Yes.
There's a phenomenon some people characterize as over-obsessive parents who are very involved in their child's high school career, especially when it comes to the extracurricular activities. They're taking this child to this sport and this child to this tournament and
Yes.
over here to dance recitals. I mean, dance recitals famously, but there's a lot of these extracurricular activities.
Well, my son has a lot of extracurricular activities that we run him around and do all of these things also. But I think it keeps him involved in school and all of his friends, and he's on the hurdles. He does the hurdles at school on the track team, and so that keeps him very involved.
Do you think this is a good trend, though? I mean, yes, it's good to keep our kids very involved. At the same time, one would argue that it's almost a reversal now. The children get higher priority for evening hours than the parents' own hobbies. Do you feel like you have things that you've had to put aside as a business owner?
Well, we have put aside things. We have him as the number one that comes first before us, and we have put things aside. So we don't let him stay at home a lot. We have him involved with either us, or he's in the Boy Scouts, or he's with the church, or he's with the school. So he's pretty involved, but we are also involved in the activities that he is also.
And yet you're involved in 2 separate entrepreneurial companies.
Yes.
And one is the catering,
One is the
and the other
catering.
is the cafe.
Yes.
So how do you find the time?
Well, my husband and I take turns and being involved with him. If he has to be somewhere, one of us is always with him there, or we all go together as a family. So we do spend a lot of family time together after work. But one of us is at work all the time.
That highlights an important point I wanted to bring up. Is it true that a lot of the kids that are struggling come from single-parent households?
I think so.
Yeah, I would say that.
Single-parent households, you had mentioned, Steve, there's more challenges. We all have, obviously, the work, And then a ton of just life chores that have to be done. Everything from shopping and meal preparation and cleanup to the various things that require our attention just to get all of our processes done. There can't be a lot of time to do what you were talking about. Run your kids around. You said you have to split the time and take turns. If there's not the availability to do that, and especially if there's more than one child in the household, which for every child you have to add a multiplier to how many activities the person will be involved in, I could see the parent waning in their ability to support that child's activities through no fault of their own. Do you see that? You had a good parental household, so you didn't have that impact directly, but you are out there and you're interfacing with kids that come a lot from single parent households.
Right. It's tough, and you know, I had that family structure to where I had two parents. I had aunts, uncles, and grandmas and grandpas. I run into a lot of kids now that they don't have that. I mean, they have a mom who's supporting 2, 3, 4 kids, and you know, whether their father figure be an uncle or somebody else on the street and they don't know their father, it's tough, and it has an impact on them as a person also.
I want to talk for just a moment about an argument I think that is a national argument about high school education today, and college also, about what we teach and the focus. A lot of us think with an increasingly technological society, we should be focusing on the hard sciences, tests for science, tests for math. But I imagine you both attended high school and had a diversity of activities and learning experiences. Where do you fall on that? Do you think that we should be teaching our kids, your kids for instance going through high school, more of the hard sciences, or do you see the value in the diversity of material that is taught, from history to a deeper level of English and literature?
I think all of it is very important. They need all of those subjects to be good at whatever they're going to end up being in life. I've done things in the past when I was younger, and I was heading in, well, when I came to Valley College and I wanted to learn about nutrition, and I learned about sewing, nutrition, and all of these things helped to make what I do now with my business. But I think it takes everything to make you a rounded out person.
And how important has being that well-rounded person served you as a business owner? Do you feel judged, for instance? Not judged, but your high school diploma said that you have some basic competencies.
Yes.
So do you feel like the high school diploma itself has helped, or do you feel like the fact that you learned so much and became that well-rounded person is what comes across to establish your credibility?
I think that's what comes across for my credibility, is all of that. Not just one subject. It took everything to be what I have become.
This idea that you can be successful without the high school diploma, I think, is on the minds of most people, because we never give up on our youth. We never give up on our adults either. If they want to better themselves, or they want to go to a trade school, or they want to learn a vocation, they can succeed, whether or not they get the high school diploma. But let me ask for either of you, the degree to which they stick to the high school curriculum, does that show kind of a tenacity that people look at? You know, a lot of people say, a lot of job hiring HR people, when they look at your resume, say your college, for instance, is just proof that you're willing to stick to a program and do what you're told, basically. So to what degree do you think a high school diploma helps in establishing that somebody is willing to undergo a program and have that stick-to-itiveness? You know,
It looks good. I mean, it's easier to explain you have a high school diploma than it's not to have one. Yeah, if you come to a job fair and you show them your resume, but you don't have a high school diploma on there, they're going to ask why, and they're going to think to themselves, why doesn't this person have a high school diploma? And this other person does. Out of the two, who would you pick? I mean, I'm going to go with the person that has a high school diploma. So,
because of the factor, what does it convey to you?
It means everything. I mean, if you don't have it, it just shows you didn't have that self-motivation to finish something that you started. If you have it, you know, you set yourself to a goal, It's 4 years of your life. You learn a bunch. You know, you make friends throughout the way, and it looks good that you have it.
And yet we talked about kids who deviate from high school in order to pursue a vocational path, get a job, get moving, get their career moving. Yet when they hit 19 and beyond, people look for that box, that checkbox, high school diploma, high school graduate or not, more than they do this factor of how much you've done. If you have 4 years experience, but you dropped out of high school 2 years early to get it, you're actually penalized, are you not?
I would think so. I mean, unless you have a really good explanation as to why you did it, they're gonna look at it a different way. I mean, they're gonna second guess why you didn't finish your high school diploma.
And Carole, you have kids that have already gone through high school.
Yes.
Where have they gone now?
What profession are they in?
Yes. How many
Well,
went to college, for instance?
My older son went to college, and he went to Crafton College, and he's in the car business now.
That's great.
So he did that right out of high school.
And of course, that's easy to do. A lot of people actually don't realize you don't necessarily need a high school diploma to be able to enroll in a community college. You do for a state college. But at least we have some fallback systems. And you toured, what's the jail's name? Is it West Valley, you said?
West Valley.
West Valley Jail in Rancho Cucamonga?
Right.
You went through that. Have you been there much as in your professional life or to other jails?
Oh, yeah. I go there once a week, at least, if not more.
I know you probably don't know the statistics on how many of those inmates don't have a high school diploma, but do you have a sense of it?
I would assume most. I mean, while you're there, you could obviously get your GED and you can work towards it, but if I had to guess, I'm assuming a majority probably don't have a high school diploma.
Wanted to talk about that program. Another area that people talk about is what to do with prisoners. They get in, and do we rehabilitate? Do we educate? Do we let them rot in jail? And obviously, especially for violent criminals, the majority of people, I think, certainly want maximum punishment level on the person. But the reality, and you in law enforcement would know best, so I'd like you to speak to this a little bit, is it is best, especially for non-violent offenders, let's say, to go ahead and continue their education so that they can be productive on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be there for their term of however long they're sentenced. You know, allow them to get their GED or to work towards a career path that when they get out, they're not continuing to commit those crimes. It gives them a sense of, I don't know, doing good, to where they feel if they get out, they don't have to go back to the life that put them in there. I would like to think that's the case in most times, but you know.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge you for a moment. Think of one of your favorite teachers, and I'll circle back to that, but I'm going to ask you why. In the meantime, let me ask this. What was your favorite high school subject?
I liked history growing up. I'm a huge history buff, but to be quite honest, it was the PE and the baseball.
That's really no surprise.
Yeah.
Most people are into that, and yet you liked history.
Right.
Were you able to admit that, or is that uncool?
Well, I didn't care what people thought. I mean, my dad always said, "Don't be a follower, be a leader," and I liked history. I definitely didn't like the math. I didn't like the sciences. Not gonna lie. I definitely did better in the things that I liked than what I didn't. And history was one of the things that I liked to do.
And Carole, how about for you?
I liked my French class the best, and I liked my teacher, Mr. McPeck. He was wonderful.
A French class,
Yes.
of all things. It's a shame that language isn't taught as much. It doesn't seem universally as used now.
I think Spanish is really the language that everyone really needs to know. And
It is actually. My son in high school is going to be taking Spanish just because there's a lot of people to whom we need him to talk and interface.
Yes.
And so if you're going to be bilingual, I think it should be something that is useful. But I love that you enjoyed that class.
I did. And my mom, she was paid more money at juvenile hall because she was the interpreter there. So it always helps to have a second language.
Oh, what language is she?
Spanish.
Spanish. Okay, and yet you took French. I would have thought you would leverage her knowledge.
Well,
as a tutor.
I started taking Spanish first, and she really couldn't help me with it. She says, "That's not how we talk." She said, I don't talk like that, like the textbooks.
Oh, I'm guessing you're telling me that it's a stilted manner
Yes.
that's in the textbook?
Yes.
And she talks conversationally?
Yes. She says, I can't help you do this, so.
Oh, that is too cute. What about you? Who's your favorite teacher?
I mean, I had a lot. I don't want to stick it to just one. I mean, a lot of the mentors, they helped me in different ways. My baseball coach, he was a special ed teacher there. Obviously I didn't take his classes, but his mentoring throughout high school helped me get to where I'm at now. And that's...
Okay, and we have another email, Sharon from Riverside. I'm a single parent and can't always get my daughters to school activities. We're new in the area and I don't know many people to ask for transportation. How can my daughter be involved in those activities?
Probably a call to the school and they would help her find somebody.
Connecting parent to parent?
Yes.
That is, as you said, very important for keeping them in the circle, the penumbra
Yes.
of the school activities. And you had mentioned how important sports was to you. I can only imagine that without those activities, you would be that much less connected to high
Right.
school.
Just, I mean, the resources, the camaraderie, but also you get to learn how other people do things or how other families are, and you get to communicate with them. You get to meet different people. And
You know, we had Marlon on the program, and you actually knew him from the school, did you not?
right, he was, he was part of the sports program.
Our guest Kenny talked about the importance to him of being involved in the track team as a way to assimilate into the greater student body, because he, as a transfer student, felt fairly isolated. And you have reinforced the idea that sports, as opposed to the perception that it takes away from academic studies, is actually a way to build teamwork and to feel that you're part of a community without having to go external, say, to a gang or somebody else for that support.
Right. It teaches, it teaches good values. In order to be a part of that, though, you have to do good in school. And, it's not hard to keep a C average. Anybody can do it. It's just, are you willing to do it? And that team camaraderie to where if you get a bad grade, your teammates are going to you're going to fail your teammates, they're going to look down on you. And in a sense, you're failing not only yourself, but also your team. And I never wanted to be that guy.
Great. I want to thank you both for being here very much.
Thank you.
I want to thank our guests, Steven Wright and Carole Inman, for joining us today. Be sure to tune in next week when we'll look at the success of an intense mentoring program for high school students, which, may be surprising, is run out of the Riverside Community College. The American Graduate Let's Make It Happen program has made this program possible. I'm Roger Bowman, and I'll see you next week on Plugged Inland.